Mhm.
Hey everybody, it's Pretty Geeky with December Lace, and tonight we have very special guest Giovanni Borunda with us. He is the creator of Neon, and tonight we're also going to play What's Your Favorite Scary Movie because Gio is the only person I know besides me and Brian who watches more scary movies than I do. Gio, welcome to Pretty Geeky.
Hi, December. Well,
Well,
good to finally be on again. It's been a while, but I'm
yes.
excited to talk about all things art, horror, and craft.
Gio, I'm going to ask because, I mean, it's the question, but what's your favorite scary movie?
Hard one. So I have like different levels for me because, like, to me, horror movies have different, like, there's different types of genres, right? And so there's like subgenres, right? So if you're telling me like my favorite classic horror film, you know what I mean? It would have to. Now, there's okay. There's like different levels, right? There's movies that are so terrifying, right? That are so great. I'll only watch one, right? Like the French film Intruders, which is really good. It's from like 2007. It's hyper violent, really gory, and it's really good. And there's another film. It's an Italian film called Dark Waters from like the 90s, which is disturbing, and it just has a feeling of dread. So my favorite horror film, I would have to say Battle Royale.
A
I'm
lot of
not sure if
people
you've
have
seen it.
been that's been in the spectrum recently.
Yeah, and
That
it's one of those movies where it's about human horror. That's
Yep.
the shocking thing about the whole movie. It's about what people are willing to do to each other, right? And so for people who haven't seen Battle Royale, it's basically a dystopian future. A bunch of teenagers are put into an island where they have to kill each other, right? And I know people are going to sound familiar, like, hey, doesn't that sound like that one movie? This movie came out in 2000, 1989. So it's older than that other movie that people reference a lot. But to me, it's about the humanity of the story because what makes it terrifying is you put yourself in that situation where the main character is in love with a girl and they're trapped on an island where they have to only one can survive, and they have to basically has to make a choice. Like, what does he do? Does he, ultimately he's have to make a choice of who's going to live or die, right? And to me, that's the most terrifying thing about the film. It's about that putting yourself in that situation where you're trapped with somebody you love and knowing full well that only one of you can get out.
Now
So it's super.
does that fall into movies that you'd only watch one time, or movies that you have to rewatch again and again?
I've rewatched the movie 3 or 4 times. I just love that movie because it's really well directed, really well acted, it's really well made, and it's just the humanity of it. It's based on a manga too from the 90s. And it's funny enough, it's the director's final movie. Like he died in post production of it, so it's just really interesting seeing like a director, towards the end of his career, and he's crafting such a human story about teenagers and like how petty jealousies and like just being awkward teenagers had enough, but now add an island and people killing each other. It's just epic, and honestly, it's that one's one of my favorites. If you're telling me like what's one of my like more commonly known ones, I would have to say Hellraiser.
What was that last part?
Oh, Hellraiser.
You and I were talking about Hellraiser right before we got on the show, and you were
Yes,
saying that it's one of those movies that means so much to you that you have multiple copies of movies.
yes, I do. I, I was way too young. I saw Hellraiser as a kid in the early '90s. My parents, thankfully, were not really strict about what I watched. Like they would take us to the local video store and we would rent out movies. And my dad was like a big fan of like Freddy and like Michael Myers and
That's
like
parenting done right.
of course.
That's
And like
Yeah, that's how I was raised too.
and my dad for some reason loved he loved Pinhead. So I was like a kid renting Hellraiser and not understanding it fully, right? And I just always loved it, and so I rewatched it again like throughout the years. It's one of the movies I constantly revisit, and it's amazing to look at the idea. It's a slow burn horror movie, and the Cenobites only come out for a limited amount of time, but it's a human story, a human horror story at the center of it. It's a story about romance. It's about forbidden passion. It's about what you're willing to do to survive, and it's about Clive Barker directs the so perfectly. Like it's just full of dread, and it just and every time it comes out, for me, it always scared the shit out of me when I was a kid, you know. And I watched like the first one, I watched the second one, I partied to the third one, even though people hate the third one, like Hell on Earth. That's the one where everyone makes fun of it. And like Hellraiser 4, the Bloodline is the one that's in space, right? But people always give it, people always make fun, right? Because in horror movies, when they go to space, that's when the space dies, right? Like think about Leprechaun in space,
I was gonna say Leprechaun went to space.
right? Exactly. Jason went to space, right? Well, what people unfairly like kind of think about with Hellraiser Bloodline is that it's not just in space. It's three different stories that interconnect and are from different timelines, right? So the movie works perfectly because it's in the future, it's in the past, and it's in the present, and it works really wonderful. But it's one of those movies that it was written, it was shot one way, and then it got taken away from the director. They recut it and they made it way too short. They left out a lot of stuff out. And it's just one of those movies where it's like it could have been so great if they would have just let the director do what he wanted and followed a really good script. And I just love that movie to death, and it's funny because so I wasn't a kid. So this is why I love physical media, right? The Hellraiser box set, right? And it's so cool because it comes with a book and it comes with like individually packaged like all this cool stuff and stuff. And so these are only two copies that I have. So I have like the Spanish Blu-ray, and then I have the 4K that just came out, right? And for me, it's just like I have. That's like for me, physical media is really important because for me, I love something I can collect, something I can hold, something I can rewatch whenever I want. I don't have to worry about Netflix took it off, Amazon took it off. If I want to watch something, I can go ahead and pick it up. And those days of media of having really good products that you can collect and hold and treasure. To me, it means a lot. It's a movie I love a lot, and it's funny because I got to meet the writer of who wrote the screenplay, Peter Atkins. He was at a signing for a book, and I got to meet him, and I got to tell him about how much I love that movie, and I was way too young to be watching that movie. And he laughed. He was really super awesome because it's one of those movies I think it's a bad rap with a lot of horror fans. And for me personally, I just love that movie. It's just I think it's highly underrated, and it's just amazing that you can rediscover stuff, and that's what I love about and like you can go back and rewatch the movies. You can go online and movie and discover something that you never knew about.
I think a lot of people, back to what you said about having something in your hands, I think a lot of comic collectors too really like having things to hold in their hands. And part of what you do is what you draw right on the sketch covers
Yes.
with your art, so people can hold them in your hands
Hmm.
or hold it in their hands.
Yeah, it's one of those things where for me, like I've been wanting to draw since I was about a kid, since I was about 9 years old.
Was that
I
around the
remember
time you watched Hellraiser?
probably
Okay.
that's the time actually I discovered. So it was the early '90s, and it was the perfect time, right? Because the X-Men cartoon was out, the Batman
Yes.
cartoon was out, and Spider-Man
I'm
was out.
noticing that influenced a lot of people.
Oh yeah, and I think for people in my generation, it was like a big impact because for me, that was like the first time I had ever like gotten like the full impact I have, of comic book characters, right? And for me, it just opened up my eyes to how cool these characters were, right? And it really influenced a lot into like stuff I would fall in love with, right? Like for me, the Batman cartoon is perfect because it has that film noir type of setting, right? It's
Amen.
dark and it's so perfectly done because it's adult stories that you really don't get as a child, right? But when you rewatch it, they're really tragic and they have like a lot going for it. And it's funny because you don't get that as a kid. And for me, I fell in love with it, and it led to a lifelong attention for me with film noir and for like crime stories and stuff like that. And at that same time, I discovered that, and then I also discovered image print. So it was probably 92, right? I was probably like 9 years old, I think. And my parents took me to a Swami, and there was a guy selling comic books on the table, and he had like X-Men and Spider-Man. I was like, I know these characters, right, from the cartoon. And I saw Spawn number one. And It was the first comic book I ever bought. Was Spawn number one, and I think Wildcats number one. And it was funny that led to my big obsession with collecting comic books after that. Because for me, it just opened my eyes. Because uh, growing up in a family that didn't have much money, right? I didn't have like the luxury of having extra money to spend on stuff that we didn't need, right? And so like the most I got was like renting VHS from like the mom and pop store down the street, right? And for me, like my parents saw that I looked at that age, and they really pushed me to follow my dream, let me read these comic books that they didn't understand. My parents were like, they're from, my mom is from El Salvador and my dad's from Mexico, right? And so to them, they didn't understand comic books and X-Men and stuff like that. So to them, I was just reading these books or pictures, and they let me dream about wanting to draw comic books. And so at that age, I started drawing my own comic books. I had like this dream about drawing comic books, and I drew every day in class, and I got in trouble publishing. Actually, I did. This time my mom actually
Horror
had to have a
movies are okay. Comics, though,
yeah. Well, it's funny because my teacher had a talk with my mom because my mom did not like the fact I just like reading comics during class. And so I guess my teacher had to have a talk with my mom, and he even explained to her, like, these books are not just for kids; they're actually really well written, and it's good that he's taking an interest in reading, right? And so thankfully, the teacher was really awesome about that. And my mom was like, "Fine, let him keep reading," right? And so that kind of started my love of drawing. And for me, it was physical, right? Like drawing because my dad drew right when I was a kid, right? And I remember when I was like getting into comic books, right? My dad he drew an airbrush like a cover based on Jim Lee, right? And my dad airbrushed it and also. So my dad was extremely talented, but my dad never did anything with his art. Like he just kind of drew it for fun, and he never did anything, right? And fast forward, right? Recently, in the last few years, as I got older, I started realizing like I didn't I didn't want to have that regret of not drawing more, right, or trying to like live out that dream of being able to draw comic books or draw covers and stuff like that. And I had that I didn't want to get older and realize I missed the opportunity, right? And so my writing was taking off, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take this shot. I'm gonna try drawing again. I'm gonna try to do better. And thankfully, I had a lot of people that gave me really great advice, or that taught me how to draw digitally because now it's a new era, right? Now you're drawing digitally, and so for me, it was weird because I always been pen and paper, write markers, and stuff like that, and now going to a new world where you're drawing digitally, you're scanning, you're coloring digitally, right? And it blew my mind when I discovered there's a stabilizer button on Clip Studio. So it was really interesting just seeing like, you know, when just drawing and learning and crafting because I hadn't drawn for years. Because what happened, of course, when you're a teenager, right? You get into music, you get into like, being a teenager, and you like you're too cool for that. Because back when I was in high school, liking comic books was not at all, And I went to a very, very, how should I say it? Uh, it was a very, very special school. Like it was just, well, let me see. It was a very, very. It was full of like cholos. It was full of punks. It was full of. Like, it was just
You
very,
have to
very.
explain what that means for the larger audience.
Basically, it was diverse. The
I
team
was
is
gonna
very
say
diverse.
we're a diverse crowd, so we don't know what that word means.
Yeah. So I grew up in LA, right? And so coming from like a background where, like, my family grew up in a background where it was very a lot of my family members were in gangs, right? And the thing is back then, like a lot of people didn't have a choice. It was either like you grew up and you joined the gang, and then, or either you grew up and you got a job and you had family and you had kids, and that was it, right? There wasn't a lot of dreaming about being a creator or something like that was not something that was realistic to me back then, right? And because a lot of people never believed like in my talent, growing up, and it was just one of those things where I was always like an outcast because, in my family, while a lot of my relatives went to gangs and stuff like that, my mom was really strict in this, and so she pushed us to follow, stay in school, work hard, and she let us, work on our creative stuff, and she let us, express ourselves, right? And so at that age, I was a teenager. I was wearing all black. It means I had my nail polish, right? And it was like, she allowed me to just express myself and write dark poetry, right? And write about like draw like my dark things, right? And especially it's funny because I was talking to Kim about it recently, is at around like 95, 96, I discovered The Crow, right? And dude, that blew my mind. When I was like a teenager, like that just expressed everything I felt like, the movie and the comic book, right? But the movie, the soundtrack, the just like the whole melancholic vibe of it was just so perfect for me at that age. I fell in love with it, and I bought the comic book and I bought like the trade and I read it back and forth for years, and it just really opened my eyes that you could do more with comic books. You didn't just have to do superheroes, or you didn't have to do Superman or something like that. You could do something deep, poetic, and meaningful, right? And for me, that's kind of opened my eyes, and at the same time, it got really right. At that age, I discovered filmmaking, right? And I discovered like, oh wow, somebody directs these movies, right? Somebody makes these movies from scratch. Who is that person? And that's when I fell in love with like, I became more of a cinephile. I became like really obsessed in discovering movies and discovering who influenced this director, right? So I know you're a Jallo fellow, right? And I know you like a few. So I can tell you how I discovered Giallo genre, right? For anybody who doesn't know, Giallos are Italian thrillers that were made in the late 60s and the 70s up to the 80s. And they're like basically a murder mystery with a bunch of sex, violence, and really
They're
awesome stuff.
awesome, is what they are. Okay, they're
Yeah.
awesome.
And
Once you go giallo, you don't do like anything for a solid month. Besides that,
exactly.
so cool.
And it is. And it's funny because I can tell you how I discovered it because of this movie, Dawn of the Dead, right? I bought this when it came out in 2005, I think, or earlier, the DVD. And it has I fell in love with this movie, right? And I was like, who is this Dario Argento guy that produced Dawn of the Dead, right? Oh, who is this Goblin? This soundtrack is amazing, right? And I discovered Dario Argento thanks to this movie because I was like, I researched, I was like, who is this person? Who is this guy who produced this movie? Who is the soundtrack? And I discovered Suspiria. I discovered, like, I discovered a bunch of my, like, hold on, let me show you some really cool.
Okay, so really quick for everyone who's first hearing of giallo, because I didn't hear about it until I was uh, probably within the last couple of years, and shame on me. Giallo is the Italian word for yellow. It's a stylized horror subgenre. Um, it's characterized by extremely violent, like slashings and lots of uh, very red blood, very saturized color, and there's very beautiful ladies walking about. They're basically perfect. I don't know if it's a requirement for Italian hotties to be walking around, but it's a lot of supermodels, and it's a slasher um, in and mystery with the killer. So it's like Scream before Scream happened. So you had the
Mhm.
pieces laid out for the clues to figure out who the murderer was, and people would get killed in very dramatic
Like,
ways, and
yeah.
and then like toward the end there'd be a big reveal, and it's gorgeous in the settings and very beautiful, but it's also very saturated. Like it's not like just purple, it's a very vibrant deep purple. It's like the purplest purple you'd ever see, and they're usually
Mhm.
in the 70s or like early 80s, late 60s. You'd probably know more about the timeline than I would, but they're so good. And there's only really one American one that's I think Alice Sweet Alice is like the closest to American Giallo that you can get. But yeah, I saw Suspiria and it just blew me away, and then ever since then I'm like the original Suspiria.
Oh yeah, I've
Yeah.
been seeing it, and it's funny because giallo movies. So there's different genres. Right? There's the proto giallos, right, which in the '60s that Mario Bava did, and those were kind of more like straightforward Alfred Hitchcock type of thrillers, right? And like The Girl Who Knew Too Much. The first movie to really introduce like the staple of the colors that giallos are known for was Blood and Black Lace, which Mario Bava directed in the late 50s. And that one introduced like the funky music. It introduced the red lights, the blue lights, the green lights, and introduced a stylized killer, the killer with the black gloves, the killer with the trench coat with
Yeah.
no face, with a face mask. It introduced a lot of those aspects. And then Dario Argento came in and he introduced like the more like psychological aspect of it, especially with the bird with image, which is one of my favorites. And with that one, it's a big influence on me because it's a serious giallo. Because eventually the giallo became really there's two types. There's a serious one, right? Like you saw her die, the bird with crystal plumage, don't touch your duckling. Right? There's like the serious ones, and then you have like the ones that are just sleazy and campy, like strip nude for your killer, right? That's one of my favorites. Uh, the movie is amazing, and it's a big influence on the stuff that I do because it has like a really outlandish plot. And the thing about Giallos, if you watch enough of them, sometimes the reveal of the killer can be really awesome, and then sometimes the reveal is just so shit crazy about why the killer kills. Right? If you guys ever, one of the more crazier ones is Lucio Fucci's New York Ripper. And for you guys who don't know, the killer has a Donald Duck face, right? It's a hyper violent movie, Giallo movie, and the killer's, has a Donald Duck voice, right? So you have to watch the ending to realize why that why that voice is important to the story. And to me, like when I got introduced to Giallo movies, it really opened my eyes to first of all style. Dario Argento was a really stylistic director. Like his shots, he would do a really. He was the first director I knew that had a style, like the Italian. The first director I really discovered that I was like, who is this guy? Was John Carpenter, right? John Carpenter was like Halloween, a thing. He did, for me personally, he should be China, right? Like that's my jam. And for me, he was the first director I knew by name because all his movies have a vibe to them, right? They have that soundtrack, they have that look, they have that feel, they have the anti-hero who hates authority. Fantastic. And it's funny that for me, John Carpenter and Marvel movies are a big influence on my own personal work. Like when it comes to Neon, Neon is my version of John Carpenter and Giallo movies together mixed in with Brian De Palma. I'm not sure if you ever seen Just the Kill or Body
Which one?
Double. Just the Kill.
No.
Oh, it's Brian De Palma doing Dario Argento, and it's super good. And it has Michael Caine in it, and it's really good. I highly recommend it. And Body Double is really good. It's another one of his American Giallos, really good. But it's funny discussing like 70s movies and Giallo movies, right? It's a genre not a lot of people know of. And for me, when I discovered them, it really opened my eyes to like I love crime movies, I love noirs, and now you add in a slasher element, and that's what Neon is at heart. And heart, Neon is a Giallo movie mixed in. I always tell people a slasher because not a lot of people know what a Giallo is. So I have to kind of explain, like, oh, a Giallo is this. So to make it easier for people, it's an '80s inspired slasher movie. You know what I mean? Like neo retro slasher movie. And for me, it was really important to showcase all the stuff that I love, right? Because I went to film school, and in film school, I had to make a final project, right? And a lot of people on my team were making like dramas about guys dealing with addiction, and other guys are making like these serious topics. And me, I was trying to make a movie, slasher movie, takes place in a cemetery about sorority girls pulling a prank on each other, and I'm gonna write, direct, produce, and score it, right? And a lot of people were like, "So it's supposed to be corny on purpose?" And I'm like, "Yes, it's supposed to be." Right? And not a lot of people understood what I was doing. And it was funny because when I was shooting the movie, my director of photography, even he was like, "So you want So okay, so he would kind of he didn't understand what I was doing, but I was like, trust me, it'll work, right? And so finally, when I showcased the movie, and people finally saw my vision of what I wanted it to be, and they're like, they finally understood, like, oh, I get what you're doing now. And this was back in 2003, no, 2013, and this is before Stranger Things kind of brought back 80s, synth music, right? And so back then, a lot of people knew, like, why does it have that weird thing? And for me, it was like I was trying to channel my inner John Carpenter, right? And so it was funny because when I made that movie, what I told people was like, if I never get to make another movie again, I want to make something based on the things I love. I want to make something 80s related, something slasher related, and something John Carpenter inspired. And that was my goal. And so when I made Neon originally started off as a screenplay I wrote at the film school. And Neon was written in about 2008. And it was
Well,
originally.
I wanna clarify real quick. I'm glad that we
Oh,
were on the topic of Giallo because Giallo inspired Gio's character and series Neon. And if you could, do you have a light that you can show
yes.
your character for us? This
Yes.
is a lot of people. This is the first time they're gonna see it. And
So,
if you want to see more, Geo has he has several ways that you can see his art. He's on Facebook. He's on Insta, and I have a few of his comics too. He doesn't just do art. He writes as well, as you may have picked up on this. But um, as you can probably, as he'll show you soon, Giallo is what inspired his character. But
yeah,
go ahead and show that off.
I'm waiting for the light to get a little bit better,
Oh,
but
okay.
give it to it. So, so
Yeah,
this is what.
the closer to the lens is probably best, but yeah. Oh, look it, and he even covered it up because Giallo is also. As soon as I mentioned to people in a former post that it's basically prawn, people are like, "How can I see this Giallo? This is amazing!" And they were very interested in that. So yes, there is a lot of sexuality in Giallo. But
Yeah, there is.
thank you for being conservative there. But yeah,
Well, yeah, I was. You
but go
never
for
know.
it. There's what was that cover?
That was for
You can go
Neon.
ahead and show it all you want.
That was for Neon number one, the first issue I wrote. So,
Yes.
Neon was like Neon was a big. You want to show it, Jen? Oh, hold on, I have my sister doing it. One second. There. There we go. Right.
Awesome.
So that's Neon number one. So Neon number one sets up the story, which is supposed to be a four-issue story, and it's basically about a girl named Annalisa whose best friend is murdered at the hands of a serial killer who wears black gloves and has a trench coat, like a Giallo movie. And basically, she feels guilty because they never got to reconnect because they ended their friendship on a bad note. So she's determined to figure out who's this killer and why did he kill her friend. And ultimately, the story about Neon is a story about loss. About it's about closure, it's about forgiveness, and it's about letting go, right? And all of this is mixed up in a story with murder, scenes, and 80s soundtracks. So one thing I did in Neon is for me, it takes place in 1983, and I really wanted to have a like when you watch movies, they have soundtracks like a movie, right? And really
Yeah.
important scenes. So I wanted to bring up comic books, and so throughout the comic, there's little notes that say this song would play at this moment. And so for me, it was really important to not just. I really wanted to avoid playing like flashback, 80s weekend type of music. I don't want to play "Ah Ha Take on Me," right? Or I don't want to play "Shout" by Years, right? Even though I love
Yeah, there's
we
nothing wrong with that. It's just not for that scene.
exactly, and we love Tears for Fears in this house. That's Kim.
I remember that about your book too. The way that you
Oh,
did that. It's really cool.
thank you.
Yeah.
And
I
it's
have that series. It's very good.
oh, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's for me. It was one way to immerse the reader in the story itself. Because for me, it was really important choosing the right songs for the right moment because the story itself opens with New Order's Blue Monday, right? And it's really funny because New Order, for you guys who are big into like most, you know, into music, so New Order, right? Blue Monday, but they were a band created out of Joy Division, right? And Joy Division was a really popular band in the late '70s, and when the singer died, the band had to either the band ended and they rejoined as New Order, right, which is a new wave band. And it's truly funny because a lot of like the early material is dark because it references the death of the former singer. And so for me, I thought that was a perfect way to start off that series because the connection of music to loss. And for me, Neon came from a place about loss. Right? I had lost for me, I've lost a lot of people in my life, and I lost somebody close to me a few years ago at a young age, and I remember it when that person died. It was weird because I never got to get closure, right? And I never got to say like, "Hey, you know what? I'm glad to see you in a different place, and I'm glad that you're doing better," or rekindle that friendship, right? And I was left with that feeling of guilt for years, a long time, to come to understand, to realize that you know not that feeling will never go away, but I can take comfort in knowing that I hope they understand that. Like, as I've grown and older, I've grown to accept that fact that sometimes life doesn't always give us the happy ending that we want. And I was also inspired by when can I say it? Okay. When Kim's mom passed away 2 years ago, it was a big loss for her and I because we were really close with her mom. And, just seeing her go through that loss, right? Being on the outside and watching somebody deal with loss of her mother, it really just put me in that feeling of just of wanting to make up with somebody and wanting that last chance to make it right. And so Annalisa was a perfect character for that because for her, she had this falling out with a friend and she never got a chance to tell her how she felt or to apologize or to make up for that friendship. And for me, it was my way of dealing with that loss, right? And that story really helped me kind of come to terms with a lot of stuff in my own personal life. And it's funny because I tell people this idea, right? And like, oh, but it's still a slasher story. Like, yeah. The thing is that you can tell a slasher story, you can tell a story about aliens, you can tell a story about clowns, but it's about the what you bring to it, the humanity to it, the connection, the characters, right? You can make any story work as long as you bring the right element of storytelling to it. And that's something I think a lot of people forget. Like if you think about RoboCop, right? RoboCop, the '80s movie, uh,
What am I not thinking of RoboCop?
I think about it all the time.
I mean, you have to.
I quote that movie all the time. I
Your move, creep.
that. Oh, you know how much I'll buy that for $1.
Oh, totally. Brian actually got to meet him, and he mentions his degree a lot. So, those of you who are going to meet him, make sure that you mention that. Otherwise, he'll mention that for you.
Oh, of course. And it's funny because,
Really nice dude, though.
oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Because I love Paul Vanderhoven, the director of it. He did Total Recall.
Yes.
He did Starship Troopers. He's done like so
I
many
love
classic movies.
Starship Troopers. I can't even tell you how much.
Oh, me too. And
Do you want to know more?
Oh, it's so perfect, and it's funny because I saw that movie when it came out, and I saw when it bombed in the theaters, and no one got it, and now everyone suddenly realizes, hey, this is a really great movie. It's like, yes, it's perfect.
Yeah, it is.
And it's funny
hey, respect. People got no respect.
Exactly, and it's funny because RoboCop, if you think about it, RoboCop is such a dumb idea on paper, right? Guy dies, brought back as a robot. The end, right?
Yeah.
But think about all the little nuances that Paul Vanderhoven and the writers brought to that movie, right? The movie is basically a religious allegory. It's about somebody dying and being resurrected, right? That's honestly the basic movie. And it's funny, Paul Vanderhoven talks about in articles that he did that on purpose because he's a big, he's he wrote a really good book, right, on like religion and about Christ as a political figure as opposed to a religious figure, and it's really amazing. But it's just really interesting how filmmakers can bring this. And I use this example because a lot of people think about RoboCop is such a dumb idea, right? But they made it work. Same thing with like there's other movies like that. And for me,
Yeah,
Neon.
Narnia is like that.
Hmm.
It was deliberately done, and I think a lot of people kind of understand that once they watch the movie and they see Aslan like in front of them. But I really didn't know that about RoboCop. That's amazing, and I need to read the book and then pass that along to other people so I can get them to convert and see their Lord and Savior.
It is funny because, like I said, Paul Verhoeven, he's not a religious. He's not a religious person.
Well,
He's
he
more interesting.
revived me.
Oh, dude. And like I said, for
Praise
him,
be.
and that's what I love about like creators, right? Like there's creators who have voices, creators that have bring their own themselves to their work, right? And Paul Vento is one of them. John Carpenter's one. You have directors who just have like this style among to themselves, right? And it's really interesting how, for me, so going back to Neon, it's a story that's really born out of loss, born out of like anger, born out of you know, wanting closure and stuff like that, and to turn it into a positive. And
And
it's something that,
having boobs on the cover helps, though, right? Yeah.
of course, because
Yeah.
it's something. You know what? And it's funny because Grant Morrison, I met him at a signing years ago, right back when I was first trying to get in, and we were talking about, I was talking to him about comic books. And I was telling him we were talking. He gave me great advice. What he told me was, you know, what makes for the best stories is the connection to the reader, right? Is when you make something, when you can connect with somebody, that's what matters. When he wrote All Star Superman, it was about him dealing with the problem of death, right? If you ever read All Star Superman, it's about the levels of loss, right? With Superman going through different stages in his life as he realizes he's gonna, right? And it's such a perfect story, and it comes from his own loss of his own father. And that's something he told me, like, when you can make that connection with somebody and they cannot feel alone, that's what matters. And it really hit me. We're talking about comic books here, right? We're talking about, something that people kind of like, you know, don't really look at. For me, that's what really matters. It's the idea of connecting to people. And if somebody can read, Neon, and hopefully, sure, they have great covers and it has like kills and stuff like that. But to me, you can read it and understand and maybe take away something from it. To me, that's what matters. To me, that's the type of connection I want with people, and I think that's what makes the best work, especially nowadays. Be- yeah, because honestly, there's so many books out there. There's so many like, stuff, media you can buy, movies and streaming and stuff like that. And what matters more is finding stuff you can connect to yourself and stuff that matters to you.
What kind of connections have you gotten with the fans that have read your work, or
I've gotten
have seen your art?
I've gotten really good feedback, to be honest with you, and that's what kind of makes it all worth
Oh,
it.
good.
Because being, you know, like for me, writing has always been my love. Like I've always loved creating, and I've always loved, I've always dreamed about doing this, right? And it's funny because when I turned 35, I had been at my regular job for about 10, 15 years, right? And I kept on having this dream. I want to write comic books. I want to write comic books, but when do I have time? I have a personal life, right? I have things going on. And I was turning 35, and I was like, I have to give this a try. And it's funny because at that time, I got laid off from my job. I was at for like years, right? And I was going to film school, and I suddenly didn't have, income, like stable income, right? I had to live off unemployment, and I found myself at a crossroads, right? What am I going to do with What am I going to do with my life? Because I've worked every day of my life, and now that's gone. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to keep writing a try. I'm really going to try and take this seriously. And so I really started researching, reading about comic books, about writing. And the thing about people don't realize is two things. Right. The first thing is writing comic books. There's so many ways to write comic books that it's impossible to, there's no book you can get right. There's like different books, different creators write different ways, and there's no real way to do it. And what I found was my background in film really helped with my writing because I would look at it as a film script and it was easy to adapt. But the thing that I realized is that also, sadly, there's not a lot of people willing to help people out in comic books these days. I don't know if you've noticed that, but it's weird because like when I
I
was
mean, I
starting,
have to watch what I say because I have a show, and then if I say that, people might not want to be on it. But the views and opinions of December's guests do not necessarily reflect December's views and opinions.
of course, but it's interesting, right? Because like for me, like I didn't know anybody in comic books. I didn't know any creators or anything like that. And for me to learn on my own and write and how to like how to how to create comic books. And it's funny because like I remember when I first started out, talking to ed, I try to do the regular route, right? Talk to editors and stuff like that. And so many people are so quick to brush you off, like, "Oh, go write a comic book and come back to us," right? And then and then years, a while later, I did a comic book. I had it printed, and I came back to them. They're like, "Nothing, crickets," right? But it's funny because at the same time, I've met so many great creators also, so many independent creators. Like I remember the first convention I went to, right? Like during this time where I didn't know what to do with my life, and I met Bill and John Kurtz, right? And they have a company called Yin Yang Productions, right? And they were at a convention near me, and I just happened to go. I just kind of felt kind of like maybe talking to creators, and they were the first guys I met that were like me, regular people who just did this for the love of it. They weren't trying to be, they weren't trying to be X-Men. They weren't trying to be like all this, They were just making their own creative work for themselves and for fans. And it was the first time I realized, you know what, I could do this myself. I could, but if no one wants to help me out or no one wants to open the door for me, I can do it on my own, right? And so they gave me some great advice. They're like, you know what, just do your own mini, just do something like that and put it out yourself. You don't need somebody to let you in. And so I was like, you know what, you're right. And that's when I started really trying to learn how to write and draw. And it's funny, I really recommend for writers to try drawing what it is that you're writing. That's like a big, because I've noticed that sometimes writers tend to just write like if they're Alan Moore and they want to write like a bunch of words, right? But remember, somebody has to write this. And for me, I was very weak early on. I tried, as an exercise, I tried drawing what is I wrote, and I could not do it. Like I had too many words. I didn't have enough room. I didn't have enough room for the dialogue. Like so, it was a real learning. I learned as a writer, you have to be really careful with pacing. It's all about pacing when writing comic books. And for me, it's having to draw out what I wrote for me to learn to write for writers, right? Because comic books are a visual medium, and you have to be really attentive to that because somebody has to draw what it is that you're doing. You have to make room for like the dialogue, actions, action, and stuff like that. And by drawing it myself, I kind of learned, like, okay, you know what? I know I'm not going to write this epic battle scene and have a bunch of dialogue, you know. And it's really funny because at the end of the day, I think that you know we all learn from our mistakes, right? And for me, early on, I did a lot of. I'm really happy that I tell this to people all the time. Like, I'm really happy that I got to be public at 36. Actually, was when I first got published, and it was funny because Eric from Milestone Comics gave me my first shot, and it's funny how it happened because he has a series called Primal, right? And I was a
He's
fan.
talking about Eric Allen Nelson, everybody, and Geo has written Primal,
Yes.
and you can find that from Eric Allen Nelson's Facebook. He probably has a what's his? Do you know what his site? It was a Kickstarter, which I backed proudly. It's very good. Yeah, show off that issue. One of
Oh,
them is illustrated by world class artist Nii Rufino, which is absolutely fabulous. Pick that up.
oh yeah.
So Eric, thank you very much for employing. Hell yes, show that off. Gorgeous.
So here's the funny thing, right? So this is it's funny because Eric, you know, I was talking to Eric and I told him about working on a mini comic, right? I was going to draw myself. And Eric, hit me up and was like, "Hey, you're a writer? Oh, yeah." So me and him started talking. And I was young and I was naive and in a good way, right? And so Eric's like, "Hey, show me a sample of your writing." And see, I'm thinking about bringing back Primal, right? Because there was a huge gap when the series ended for a while. And so this story right here was a sample script that I wrote for Eric, right before I even got a job with him. I wrote a 52-page screenplay, like comic book, and this was the first project I ever did professionally, right? But it got me the job to do this one, and this is my first published work. And so I'm really glad that Eric liked it enough that he actually turned that script into an actual comic book, which was something I wrote that I could write comic books. And Eric gave me that shot when no one was there because he saw potential in me, and I really like working with Eric because he's really collaborative, and best of all, he's really open to my ideas and to letting me create, and we work together well because one thing I've learned as a creator is I value my independence a lot. Like I value being able to tackle themes, story, characters, and tell the story that I feel it needs to be told. But at the same time, we can talk, right? Like if there's something that doesn't work and Eric has a good comment about it, you know what, I might disagree, but then we talk about it, and then you know what, actually makes it better, right? And so it's really interesting because I worked with him on the last few Primo stories. I did that issue, and funny enough, issue two was drawn by Courtney. The cover.
Yes, I remember that cover. Courtney Rose Dameron did that cover, and it is spectacular. Can you put that up to the lens closer? Yes, fabulous.
So for me, being like
Hit up
for me,
Courtney, hit up Eric. If one of the things that means a lot to me is when Kickstarters are done right. I've backed a couple of them from Eric by now. He's legit. He does really good with his campaigns. He's good on communication. He's good on employing the correct artist to do stuff. He's got a really good lineup. So yes, those are legit. I'm a happy customer multiple times over. He's got geo writing, so he's a good dude.
well, thank you. I really appreciate it. I mean, like I said, it's
Eric is the one that should be appreciating it, but I'm sure he does. He's cool. He's talked to me before.
he's really
Yeah, he's a good
awesome.
dude.
And I'm really thankful for Eric because honestly, like I said, he lets me have my creative freedom, which I value the most. Because so after film school, I got a couple of jobs working in film, and on film sets and working with producers and stuff like that. And I had a writing job with a producer, right? And it was the worst experience I ever had. And one thing I've learned is that, like, people in Hollywood, especially like in film related, areas, there's a lot of people that aren't creative that want to tell you how to do your job. And that's one thing I learned that I cannot do. I do not, I don't like, I did a job once where I had to edit a project for a client, and it was the worst experience I ever had. And after that, I swore to myself that I would never do a job where I had to keep my, like, my creativity because this creativity, I mean, like, it's, you know, I work best. For me, I've learned that I work best when I'm working with people who are passionate and like people like myself, right? And people that want to do the best for the project. And working on film, it was not a good experience. And for me, I learned my independence and learned to value the creative process. And for me, like working with Eric and Jim and a couple other people, Gary, like I'm not sure if you've seen this, but this is another issue I did. So this is from Gary Perkins. He drew this series for me.
That is
Not for me.
awesome.
So Eric was doing a a hardcover. He was doing a series called Bad Boy Ontology, right? And I'm a big fan of Gary's work, and for 3 years now. And I've been wanting to work with him for a good while. And so when this project was coming about, he wanted to do an anthology about '90s bad girl comics, right? And I grew up in the '90s, and I was reading all the '90s bad girl comics. I was reading, Witchblade. I was reading Star Child. I was reading Death. I was reading all these '90s bad girls, right?
Magic
Laser.
word, Witchblade.
Uh huh. And so Gary hit me up, and he was like, "Hey, you want to take part in this?" And it's funny because with this project, you know, I had free creative freedom to do a story that's kind of, it's inspired by today's world, right? Because I live in LA, and at the time, even now, there's when I was a kid growing up in the '90s, there was a really high crime rate. There's a lot of gang stuff, people getting killed, and it was just a really dark time in LA that I remember, like growing up and seeing like the LA riots and stuff like that. And so for me, lately in the last few years, I've noticed like crime has gone up, there's violence going on, and I remember there was a story that Kim told me. When we were watching the news, and it was about a lady whose child who the daughter was killed in a car accident, and basically the criminal got off, right, because the parents were wealthy, right? And it just reminded me, just it really struck me, just kind of like how society can be, really cruel. And so when I was writing this story, it's called Porcelain, and it's about a girl whose sister is killed by a rich kid, and he seeks revenge on on him, right? And it's really inspired by '90s, it's really inspired by The Crow. It's really inspired by Razor and other '90s comics, and I really wanted to have a '90s aesthetic, so it's really reliant. It's the first chapter is called "Something I Can Never Have," which is a Nine Inch Nails song. So it's really inspired by like '90s goth, industrial. It's really inspired. It's rainy, it's grimy, and for me, the story is just at the heart of it. It's a story about a character wanting closure. As you can tell, my theme, and
I imagine there's a lot of like minded people out there that are just salivating, going, "Where can I find you?"
well, if you want,
We
like,
will have information for you. Gio will let you know where you can find him and his books.
oh, for sure, and I'll have that. For the most part, like I know Gary has books up. Eric has books up on his website that you can buy. I'm really excited too because the latest issue of Primal has Christian Zaner on it. And for you guys and I know you're a big Top Cow fan, but he was an artist in Top Cow in the '90s, and he drew Rise of Stars. And so to have him in the book, he was like, epic. Like I was like, oh my god, one of the '90s guys. And for me, it's one of the best things is working with creators who are just awesome at you, as you imagine they are, And in this situation, like I've been lucky enough to, I'm always grateful to be in this place where people want to read my stories, and I'll never take that for granted because for me, we all start off as humans, right? I started off as a big fan of Todd McFarlane, right? When I was 9 years old and I discovered Spawn, right? And I've been really lucky that a lot of the people that I've met, like I got to meet Todd McFarlane once, and I got to thank him for the influence he had on me as a creator, as me as a kid. You know what I mean? I got to meet Bruce Timm once as well, right? And for you guys who don't know, Bruce Timm was the creative and visual creator of Batman cartoons in the '90s, and I got to thank him just for my childhood. Come on, like, this guy created a cartoon that like, just made me fall in love with film noir and crime and just like a whole aesthetic of 1940s, 1930s, and stuff like that. And I've been really lucky to have met a lot of great creators. Like, I had a really good talk with Rick Remender, and he's written a lot of great books. And he gave me some great advice, something that I really take to heart. And it's something that he said, like, he's grateful for he was something like always be grateful for your readers, right? And also never feel bad about having to pay your dues, right? And that's something I think a lot of people forget. So many people, I think, in this world want instant gratification. They want success right now, right? They want to have they want the success and the money and everything right away. And the thing about it is that when you get success right away, you don't appreciate it for the most part that I've noticed. And it's when you really work for something and you put your blood, your tears, sweat, and you're passionate into, and you work hard at it every year, every book, every issue, you appreciate it so much more because people are giving you their hard-earned money and believing in your storytelling and believing in your craft. And even if it's, same thing with your cover, with your art, right? People are buying your cover, buying your art and stuff like that, and supporting you to live out your dream. In today's world, it's rare for people to live out their dreams. And going back to that's my cat, Aries. That's my cat, Aries.
She's announced herself.
Oh, that's the boy. That's my other boy.
We'll
Yeah,
bring him.
hold on.
We have
Aries.
fans. They want the
Okay,
kitty.
so
Oh,
this,
there he is. It's a
so this
little
is
ginger prince.
so this is our boy, and he's a big fan of everything. Actually, he loves everyone. He's like a dog instead of a cat. He loves people. And he's a chatterbox. So that's our.
Apparently,
It's funny, right? So Arya is the black cat, and she's the one that we call the top one, and the boy is the normal one.
she is the dark one. I've seen pictures.
Oh yeah, she's actually not happy right now.
Why?
Sorry, what? Arya has this habit where she sees people, she'll just stand up in the corner and just watch us from afar because she doesn't want, she loves us, but she doesn't want to be next, right?
He
Kim
sounded
Sha-
like he really wanted attention.
well, he does. Hold on, we're trying to. Yeah,
Bring
Arya's
him.
not happy.
He can join the show. It's all good here.
It's funny, right? Because all right, so it's funny, right? So going back to, so Arya is named after the Dancing album Black Arya, right? And so me, Kim, are big Misfit fans. We love dancing, and so we're big fans, right? And so
There
it's
he
funny,
is.
my boy. So it's about 10 years ago, right? Like I was at a comic book store in LA, and Danzig was like literally a couple feet away from me shopping, and I don't want to bug him because he looked like he was busy, and so I was like, you know what, I don't want to bug him, right? And I regretted that ever since, right? Because I'm a big geek, I love Danzig and Misfits, and so he had a signing recently, right, last year, and so Arya is named after one of his albums, right? She's our black cat. And so Kim's like, if you meet Angie, you have to tell him. You have to tell him about Arya, right? And so, he had a signing here by, Epiphany. We're talking about it one day. And the next thing you know, Golden Apple says, oh, we're having a signing with Danzig for his comic book, right? And so I waited in line. And Kim's like, you better show him the picture. You better show him Arya's picture. So I get to the line and I meet Danzig, right? And, it's like Danzig, I love, his comic books, erotica, and, erotic comics, stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, wife's gonna kill me if I don't show you this picture. So I showed him a picture of Arya. He lit up, and we started talking about cats for about 10 minutes.
I was gonna say that seems like something he'd be cool with. Like
Oh,
you don't really get every day where like your pet is named after something he contributed to. You know.
oh yeah. It's funny because I've never, for a guy who's known for like, metal music. Oh, here's Arya.
Oh, the Princess of Darkness, Your Majesty.
She does not like.
I was gonna say she's probably not happy, but I sure am. Hello. Thank you, Queen Kim.
She says thank you. But yeah, so it's funny because so I've been lucky enough where, so I've met a lot of great creators that have given me like great advice, thankfully, and a lot of it is really stuck to me. And honestly, like I said, from my advice to anybody who wants to do work in the creative fields, right, is first off is really know your craft, really build the craft and know it. Anybody can tell a story, anybody can think of a cool concept, but adding depth to it, adding character to it, making something that will connect to the reader on a deeper level, that's special. And for me, that's what separates, you know, the really talented creators from the workmen, right? Because in film, right, you have the authors, right? You have, the Guillermo del Toros, you have the Jean-Luc Godard, right? You have all these authors, right? People that are like, they just love cinema and they see cinema and they make films unique to themselves, right? But then you also have people like John Ford. John Ford, you have people before they created auteur theory who were just working. They were just there to make a movie, to direct a movie, to write a movie, and that was it. There was no meaning. There was no like deeper, like besides telling a story or reading or shooting the script, right? And for me, that I think, at least the way I feel it, is that find your voice, find your themes, find stuff that you want to talk about, stuff you want to share with the world. But also, me personally, I never my stuff is always I always try to let it be universal and also be subtext. It'll also be something that people can connect to if they want to. Like if you read Neon and you think it's a great book with boobs and killing, fantastic. I'm happy you love it. On the surface, that's what it is. But if you read it and you understand, like, you start thinking about, your own life, and to me, that means a lot as well, right? And for me, a lot of creators, I feel like they haven't found their voice yet before they start getting into humor. For me, in a lot of ways, I'm grateful that I waited this long to break into comic books because I really got to build and find my voice more, and I really got to learn what it is I want to talk about, right? Because when I was 20 years old, I was trying to write the screen, right? Everything was postmodern. I was making references to all these other movies, and that was that era. Because when I was a kid, Quentin Tarantino came out with Pulp Fiction, right? And next thing you know, everybody wanted to be like Quentin Tarantino, right? And then when Scream came out, everybody wanted to be like Scream. Everybody was referencing horror movies, and I was doing the same thing. And nowadays, the stories I want to tell are more they aren't me trying to channel other people. Whereas me taking my references and taking stuff that I love and redoing it and retelling it in a way where I add both my own special my own special thoughts and connections to it that I hope the reader will find. And honestly, also another big thing for me is really learn the craft, really be aware that it's a collaborative effort and that you really have to learn how to write for writers. I mean, for artists, because I think a lot of times writers get lost in their own words and they forget that somebody has to draw it. And never give up. That's a big thing for me. I've had so many doors closed on me when I was first starting out. I had so many people tell me I would never succeed, I would never amount to anything, or people who just blew me off and were just, oh well, go make a come back, and they never talk to me again, right? And people, sometimes it's easy to give up when it seems like the opportunity seems really unrealistic, right? And I stuck to it because I didn't want to live the fairy tale rest of my life. I didn't want to turn 40 years old and realize, oh man, I really wish I would have done that. I really wish I could have seen my name in print, right? And when it's funny, right, recently, um, I turned 40 like last year, and it was a big thing for me because I started thinking about legacy, right? What do we want to leave behind as creators, right? And what is it that you want to be known for, and what is it that you want to say about the world? And it's I don't know, for some reason, it started hitting me like 40. And for me, at that time in my life, I felt very disappointed with a lot of aspects, the comic book world, comic book industry, the world in general. Just felt really nihilistic about it. And I really wasn't sure if I would ever write something again because I had this huge writer's block. Everything I wrote, I thought I didn't know if I loved it. I just felt like maybe I had given I'd written the stuff I wanted to write, and this was it. And honestly, it took a lot for me and talking to other creators, and it took me reflecting a lot to realize legacy. What do I want to leave behind, right? When I die, what do I want to value, right? Do I want to value that I had all these, cover all these comics no one's going to read that we're just going to put in a CGC box and never read, right? Or do I want to put do I want to put myself into my work, my themes? Do I want the connection to the reader? And ultimately, that's what I want. That's why I do this. I do this because every day when I wake up and when I come home, with my regular day, right? And I'm hanging out here with Kim and the cats, and writing brings me peace in a lot of ways, right? Because I see this world outside, and so many things I can't change, right? I can't change what's going on in the world. I can't change supervisors, or I can't change coworkers, right? Or whatever. But I can control the world that I'm writing, and I can control, you know, what message that I want to put out, and what message it is that I want people to hopefully relate to. And you know, don't give up. You're gonna Life is full of setbacks. Life is full of people that aren't gonna believe in you, and you honestly have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in your talent. You have to believe in your skills. And as long as you have that passion, you have that skills, and also you're also humble enough to know that you don't know everything, then you'll succeed. Even if you're not making $1 million, like superhero movie. And that's something that's important to realize, because when I was in homeschool, I had this dream that I was gonna be a writer, and I was gonna write screenplays, and I was gonna write movies, and it didn't happen, right? And it took me a lot to realize, you know what, that didn't happen, but I found something more meaningful. I found a profession where I can write with people who I enjoy working with, people who feel the same way I do, and people who let me express myself, and bring deeper themes to Jingle Girl comics, or 80s, Java movies. I mean, and honestly, I've done a lot of stuff over the years, and just don't give up. Never, just grow and go with the punches. If you know what, if this story doesn't work, there's always a next one. Do yourself.
And people need their fix for those 80 stories and Jungle Girls. Where can they find you?
Well, for me, on Instagram, I think it's GOB83. I'm on Facebook under my name, Giovanni Borunda, and Borunda. And I do have people are interested in buying some of the work. They're available through National Comics. They're also available through Underglow Comics, which is Gary Perkins' company, and through Jim Noble as well. I have through him, and hold on one second. And what's really cool is, like, me as a fan, I got a hardcover of my own notebook, like my story. It's in a hardcover. Like, the collector in me is so, like, happy about this, because, like, I love hardcovers. I love collecting, like, media, and I love collecting, like, that's important to me. I know you appreciate this.
I mean, I'm just gonna have to watch that right now. For those of you who don't know what The Room is, it's cinematic excellence, and
it's perfection.
Gio, who's also a director, he'll tell you of its masterpiece, and there are no words to do it justice. It's one of the greatest movies ever made. It was made in 2003, and films made before or since can't touch it. It's legendary. I've traveled out of state to meet the director and star and writer. Just a work of absolute gloriousness.
Oh, it is. It's funny enough, the jacket that I'm wearing is actually I bought from Tommy.
Yes. That is wonderful. I didn't even know they made that jacket.
Oh, in the back it has Tommy Wiseau on the back, and it says,
"Show it."
Me up. Hold on.
Roomies out there, we must see.
Hold on, one second. I have to say, I could have changed room.
Yes. Oh, that's outstanding.
It is, and it's funny because one time I went out with Public, and Public with his jacket with Ken, and then some lady went up to Ken and was like, "Lisa, quit treating him badly." And Ken was like, "What?" And then we were like, "Oh, the jacket." But yes, The Room is fantastic. The Room is everything. This is cinema, as Martin Scorsese style.
I don't even know where they have that available. You can just
Tommy's website.
No, I mean like where to stream it because they don't have it on Netflix. But it's like the way to see that is just like in a room of friends.
Oh, it is. Me and Kim went to a screening of it with people in Hollywood, and it was the greatest experience I'd ever had in my life. Seeing the
I
room.
mean, you're in LA. That's where it debuted and has stayed there for 5 years within its opening. But here in Chicago, they do occasional screenings. Go to theroommovie.com, I believe it is, and you can see if there's local screenings. They do one in the Music Box every now and then for Chicago people.
Yeah,
Every
and
now and then,
also
Greg is there. I think one time Tommy came to the Music Box. He's got a new movie. I got to see it in the on the big screen. It's called Big Shark. It's what
yes.
you'd expect.
Oh, we apparently it's available. Apparently, the room is available on Amazon Prime. You can buy it, and also YouTube. You
Oh
can buy it.
yes.
So for you guys who aren't aware of Room, it's a movie that's so bad, it's epic, it's just masterful. And this is the important thing, right? Which I always tell people, right? There's a difference between bad movies and bad. It's so great, it's so bad, it's great, right? And the difference is passion. Tommy Wiseau was trying to make a serious movie. He thought he was making the next Gone with the Wind. He thought he was making Rebel Without a Cause, and it just fails on every aspect. But it's so wonderful because it's just epic. It just you have to see it. You
I'll
just
tell
and
you
the best
guys in
way.
all honesty, I've seen I've seen The Room more times than I've seen Gone with the Wind. And I love Gone with the Wind.
Me
But
too, and
like
it's funny.
the room is so rewatchable and so drop what you're doing like good that I can't it's hypnotic. And I can't not watch it. And it all started with like, hey, you got to see this. It's like you're not going to believe this. And then I started watching clips of it and I'm like, this guy isn't serious, is he? And yeah, he was. And the thing is, I honestly love it and I love Tommy because he pursued his dream. And nobody wanted to help him, nobody wanted to make this happen, and he made it. He did everything pretty much on his own, and he's like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna make this happen. And it, like, his movie was so bad, his eventual best friend wrote about it in a book called The Disaster Artist, and then that book was so genuinely good. It's one of my favorite books. It was so good that became a movie. Um, the Room garnered attention from a bunch of celebrities. The book garnered attention, and then they made the book into a movie, which The
Mhm.
Room was also a part of. But that was called The Disaster Artist, and then James Franco, pre all of the accusations and horrendous things that he was accused of, he got a Golden Globe for it, and probably would have gotten an Oscar if all the horrible things he was accused of doing didn't come to light. And he shared the stage with Tommy, so Tommy actually did take the stage for an actor like he always
Mhm.
wanted to do, just not in the way that he saw himself doing it. So he made that happen. And I'm not
It's
kidding. That is one of the greatest stories that I've ever heard. And he got a best friend out of it because that's how he met his best friend Greg. And he is still seen by millions of people. Millions of people watched his movie, and for a lot of them, it is their favorite movie. Like no lie.
Mhm.
I
One of
had to have seen that movie like I tons of times, and each time I laugh my hat off. It's great.
Oh my God, yeah, and it's funny because it all relates to what we're talking about here, right? As a creator, it's about not giving up, about believing in yourself, even if the world tells you no, even though people tell don't want to help you out or whatever. You know, for better or worse, you know what I mean. Tommy believed in himself enough to invest in his own talent, to invest into making a movie himself because nobody else would let him make a movie. Nobody would let him star in it. Nobody would let him write. And he made something that was so unique and wonderfully bad that he's known for that, and now he's getting the accolades that he deserves. For a movie that's awesomely bad. And I mean, I'm sure if you haven't seen the movie, you've seen the memes going around.
Oh yeah, I guarantee you that people are familiar with the memes. Like I did not hit her. It's not true.
I did not.
You've seen those probably. And the
Oh,
thing is, he's made another movie since then called Big Shark, and it is everything that he's been remembered from The Room for. It's spectacular.
I have not seen it. So it's on my list to see
It's
so far.
yeah, it's just as quotable. Same thing. The edits, the scenery changes, and the characters and the dialogue. Yeah.
Oh man, it's funny because me and Kim got to meet Tommy, right? And we went to the screening, right? And he was there in person. That's why we went to the screening, and meeting him was awesomely as wonderfully weird as we thought it was. And then he almost misspelled, I think, Kim's name. And so it was funny, right? We almost let him misspell it because, like, hey, how cool is that having Tommy misspell Kim's name? But then he was like, oh, no, K, right? K. And we were like, yes, Tommy, yes. He won't. So it's one of those things where it's just like, you know, it's funny how the room is uniting us, right? Because it's, my whole thing is telling people not to give up and believe in yourself, even if people don't want to, open a door for you, open one yourself, right? And that's something I believe in, and that's something I believe in with all my heart that anybody can do as long as they have the passion. Yeah, and it goes back to the room.
Tommy is a legit hero. I'll tell anybody that. I really
Mhm.
believe that.
Seriously, when you're making a movie, I've made a movie, right? Like I made a short film, right, in college, my horror movie, and I was writing, directing it, right, and I produced it. And if you ever made a movie, it's so much chaos going on. Like you're trying to like execute your vision, and every 5 seconds, it's hey, we can't find this person's phone. Hey, the lighting guys, where's the plug? And people, it's so much going on, right, to make a movie. And then the actors are like, hey, what's my line again? Or hey, what is my motivation for this? And there's so much going on. So making a movie itself is a miracle sometimes, right? Because when you're like handling yourself, and so a lot of credit for Tommy for making a movie that had three different crews quit on him, you know, and people like it's just one of those bizarre movies which I recommend everybody watch if you have not watched it, and I highly recommend if you drink, have a shot every time something corny happens or something stupid happens or
No,
something.
don't do that. December does not recognize that as a thing to do. You'd be legally dead. Please don't do that. December does not condone that.
Okay, do it. Okay, fine. Do it safely at home, and also, and fine. Yeah, just don't do it. Fine. Kim says I should do the right thing and say just don't do it. You might be dead.
I also recommend you're over 18 because Tommy does show his ass a lot, and there's some questionable scenes in there. But please be an adult.
Oh my god! It just
But
for some.
if you are not, I don't want to find out about it.
And if you don't like the room, please. If you're taking the room seriously and you don't get the
Yeah,
humor of it,
don't watch it if you're not gonna. If you're expecting like legit cinematic excellence, I don't know you.
no, it's like you have to know. Yeah, yeah, you have to have fun with it, you have to enjoy it, and that's the thing that people honestly sometimes don't get about bad movies. It's like you can watch a bad movie and love it. Like The Room is fantastic because it's just you can see the passion in the film, right? You can see that it's just epic on how a creative person can make something this bad and yet it's so wonderful, right? But then you can watch a movie that's genuinely bad, right? And I've seen a couple of those where they're just a movie that's so terrible that I will never watch again, right? And I think a lot of times, especially in today's polarizing world, people have such a thing where it's like they take stuff too seriously, and I think you really have to have a sense of humor to enjoy life. And for me, laughing and enjoying life and finding life, pleasure in these little things like the room. I mean, it's beautiful.
That's what
I mean,
Tommy says. If we all love each other, life would be a wonderful place to live.
oh my god, yes, exactly. That's what what does it say down here?
I probably botched that line.
Love
I'm
is
so sorry, Tommy.
love is blind.
Love is blind.
Oh my god! And you know what? All right, you know what? I'm gonna keep that with you for a second. All right. So you remember in the party scene, right? And where towards the end, right? No spoilers, but is it me or God, what's this Mark, right? why does Mark switch all of a sudden, right? Because he goes from being feeling one way
Tommy's writing the script. That's all.
but it's weird, right?
Because Lisa rages too.
But it's funny
None of your
because
business.
exactly, right?
Yeah.
That happens out of nowhere, and that's the thing because in the prior
Doesn't
well,
make
in the
sense.
prior scenes, he seems like he's conflicted about the relationship, and the next thing by 5 minutes is like, well, maybe if you're handling business,
No spoilers.
exactly. I
Key
was
plot
like,
elements. You don't want to give that away.
yes, but I highly suggest people watch The Room and then watch Idiocracy, which is a documentary of life nowadays.
Yep.
Sadly,
And then go get Geo's books so that you have something to look forward to reading.
well, I really appreciate it. And like again, I want to thank everyone who's ever backed any book I've written, people who will back them in the future, and honestly, like my goal is hopefully to give people something fun, something exciting, and something deeper on the, deeper and something
His
that they
goal
can
is to ask you, what's your pleasure?
exactly. And right now, I'm working with Eric on the next issue of Primal, which is pretty fantastic. I'm really having fun writing that. And besides that, I'm kind of just working on my own personal projects here and there, and kind of just having fun, just kind of drawing and the process. Actually, let me show you something here before we go.
Before we got on here, he was like, oh, maybe you can screen share. And I was like, December does not screen share. December barely got the link to work. We do small miracles here.
So I'm lucky enough that I've had really talented artists give me lots of great advice, right? And I've started drawing, right? And so
closest to the lens, because that looks really awesome and we want to see it. Ah, yes.
So
that looks cool.
There you go. There you go.
That's awesome.
So this is from a book that I was working on called Coven Black, which is a really cool. It's set in 1980s East LA, and it's about a bruja, and it's really cool. It involves witchcraft, solos, and lowriders. It's actually pretty awesome. But I do this for fun, and this one's actually. So I have a friend that makes films, right? And he recently made a film called Murder Skies, which is really great. And so I drew this for him.
Oh, sweet.
And so it's actually pretty cool. And then I drew this one because the film is basically a slasher movie. It's a slasher movie about murders at an aerobic studio. They're filming a video there, and somebody's killing off the performers. It's a really awesome. So yeah. So I recently started playing with colors and just kind of having fun. And honestly, it's something I like doing for myself and just kind of playing with it and stuff like that. I know I sent you a drawing that I did, and it's like you're like one out of two people that have this original art for me.
Awesome.
And yeah, but I really appreciate it, December. You've always been really awesome and really down to earth and really friendly. And
don't tell people that; they'll think that you're serious.
Well, it's true. You've actually been you've been a real great supporter of the industry and comics in general, and it's great seeing that because I think sometimes people get lost in the drama or the pettiness or the bickering, and we forget that it's something we should be doing for fun to escape life.
Don't tell people that I'm not petty or don't bicker. They'll get this wrong impression of me.
Well, hey, maybe you never know. Sometimes images are meant to be broken.
Can't have that.
All right, fine. I want everybody to forget that.
Honestly.
But yeah, I want to thank everybody though, seriously though, for checking us out. And I hope I look forward to the summer making more of these videos with more awesome creators. I always like hearing you talk about craft and art with
everybody wants to hear me talk.
Of course, why wouldn't they? Not me. I'm always gone.
No, a lot of people want to hear you talk, especially about the aerobicizing and the slasherings that happen. Maybe we'll get aeroba slash part two jazzercise.
You know, it's funny because Neon has an aerobic scene, right? In the comic book, it has an aerobic scene because every '80s movie had
Oh
an
yeah.
aerobic, and you had to have it. And I don't know, have you ever seen Prom Night, original
Which one?
Prom Night?
Oh yeah.
You
I
know,
actually really like the second one, Mary Lou.
that one's fantastic.
It
But
is, and like people, I don't know if they like downplay it or if they just don't know about it, but that is a fantastic movie. I loved it.
it is, and it's one of those underrated ones. For
Yeah.
me, the dance number in the original Prom Night, for me, that was such an inspiration. It's
How
just
did
like
I know that?
here's a slasher movie, and then all of a sudden here's a dance number set to disco music. It's like perfection.
You know what? I just saw a horror movie recently. And it was so good, but what was it called? Brian's gonna let me know what it was called. It was so good though. They had this really good scene. The shots from the shower were really disturbing. Was this is this No, that wasn't House on Sorority Row. This one was the slasher that came back. Oh, I hear His Highness. He's in the background. He's mewling. This one was it was like it's not the Hatcher. No, it was the guy from like World War II.
The Prowler?
Yeah, the Prowler.
Oh, I love the Prowler.
Yeah, that one.
So
That's
good.
what it's called, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that
the
one
guy
was
with
so
the-
good. It's
Oh,
like
it is.
it's not on any list like ever, and then somebody like put it on a list, and then we're like, oh, that sounds awesome, and I checked that out. I'm like, how does no one know about this? It's so good. I figured
Oh,
you'd know about it though.
it's a really good series. It's one of those serious slashers that I like.
Yeah.
It's directed by Joseph Zito, the guy. I think he went on to direct a Rambo movie. I think part two, I think.
Nice.
But it's a really good underrated slasher movie for me. Like The Prowler is a big inspiration for me. I love that movie because it's serious, it's dark, and it's moody, right? And plus, it starts off as a period piece, right, in the opening, and it goes into modern times. And it's funny because there's different types of slashers, right? Just like the serious ones, and then there's like more campier ones, right? Yeah. Like for me, there's Sleepaway Camp, right?
Oh
There's
yes, that one's so good.
it is. I love the first one, and I partied to 2 and 3, right? And I showed Kim Sleepaway Camp, and at the end, let's just say she was a fan.
Nice.
It was one of those things. And it's funny. It's one of those movies where I often quote, and so it's often out. Angela. Oh no, that one too. At all.
Just saw House on Sorority Row.
The original.
Yeah.
Oh, I love the original. It was funny. The director was really inspired by Brian De Palma, and so the movie is really well shot. And so when I was making my short film, mine was based on that, like on House of Sorority Row and type of stuff, and Night of the Demons. And so I was really influenced by that. And I really love that movie. It's one of those really underrated slasher movies.
Night of the Demons is really good too.
But I love that movie.
That's a good one. And that's also like not really talked about so much, but I'm like, this movie is so 80s and so good, and just like that's got a really good rewatchable factor too.
Oh, it is, and it's up there with Return of the Living Dead because '80s horror comedies are so hard to perfect, and only certain movies capture that really well. Return of the Living Dead is one of them, and Night of the Demons is the other one, and Evil Dead 2, of course, right? But for me, everyone always talks about Evil Dead 2, but we need to mention Return of the Living Dead. Come on, they have 10 more paramedics, right? And then when Trash is trying to get on the punk, he's trying to seduce the punk guy in the cemetery, and he's like, hey, hey, have some respect for the dead. and then the soundtrack is amazing. It has all these great like '80s punk bands. It has SSQ on it. It has 45 Grave in it. It's like that movie was such an inspiration for me. And when I made my short film, which I'll post on it on my Facebook if anybody wants to check it out. It's called Friday Night Frights, and it's filmed in an actual cemetery. And the movie itself, I actually my cousin came up with a rock song at the end because at the end I was supposed to have like a punk song at the end, just like the Living Dead, but we ran out of time, so we couldn't record vocals, so we just did instrumental. But for me, it was a big influence on my work, and Dan O'Bannon was such a great for a guy who was really he just that's fantastic movie, and it was really ahead of its time for a movie about punk, with horror, humor in it, and it was just it's one of those movies that I wish more people would see.
There's an artist friend of mine, JT Malloy. If
Yeah.
he got in on this conversation, he probably wouldn't leave. Like just knowing that, like that is like all him right there. He'll be a guest on this show in a couple of weeks, and
I
he'll
look
also
forward.
be at C2E2 for those of you that are going to follow this show in the following weeks. But he'll be on here. He's a huge punk fan, and then he's a writer and illustrator as well. He does the Sapphire Spectre series.
Oh yeah, I've seen
Yeah,
this really cool.
but he'll as soon as he hears this, he'll be like a periscope.
It's just funny because like I said, that's something I feel like a lot of kids today don't have. They don't have that feeling of growing up with physical media and growing up and holding a DVD or a VHS in their hand and really loving it. Like, for instance, of course, I can't find it when I'm looking for it. Oh, a VHS temperature cover.
You know those memes that are like, "Tell me you can't hear a picture," and that's one of them.
Oh yeah.
Because I just
Oh,
hear
this.
the. Dun-dun-dun-dun.
Mm-hmm. So I got to meet John Carpenter again like last year, and I got him sign my VHS
Nice.
of Halloween because I love Halloween and it's really awesome. And it's just one of these things where like VHS now is all of a sudden becoming really popular now. Now trying to find a copy on eBay is expensive.
That's the thing, and this is like one of my get off my lawn things is when VHS becomes popular again. It's like I had VHS like normally, and they were damn annoying, and I'll say it, and I'll die
Hmm.
on that hill. Okay, we were happy when DVDs became a thing because we didn't have to have the VHS snag on stuff and rewind
Hmm.
it and. Damn it, you kids don't know how good you have it, okay? VHS are not that great, and I'll say it again for those in the back. VHS are not that great, so get them for your aesthetics. They take up way more space than they need to. They're
Oh man.
they're not all awesome, okay? They're just like there was a reason that we got rid of them in droves.
Oh, I feel you. Because for me, I own copies of movies on VHS, DVD. I own it on Blu-ray, and I have on 4K, and and Kim is not happy about that because according to her, she was asking me why I keep trying to see a damn movie, and I'm just like, well, it's in 4K. I have to have it.
I get
And she
it if
said,
it's collector's art that they will not reproduce, like that's fine, but like people are like, no, this is really cool to like actually use and stuff. I'm like, no, it's not. It's gonna get snagged. It's happened to me so many times.
mm-hmm. And according to Kim, it takes up space.
Huh?
Oh, Kim's always telling me like it takes up space, and I'm like,
Yeah.
well, yeah. You know what I
It's
mean?
like, do you know what having a copy of Spice World get snagged is like? Unless you do, you don't know what it's like having a real VHS collection. These are
You know
trying
what?
times, people.
You know what? You know what? Actually, years ago, I threw out all my old VHS, and apparently now they're all worth money. I'm like kicking myself because I didn't. I should have like kept them because I could have made money on eBay. And now I'm just mad. But
It's not about money,
VHS
it's
is
about the
coming back.
message.
VHS is coming back now. There's a lot of like
Yeah,
low budget.
and I don't understand why. That's the thing. I'm like,
The nostalgia thing. It's people like love like the idea of
yeah, they
holding.
weren't there. That's my point. It's like you guys weren't there for that.
They weren't. Sadly enough, I remember having when the table gets stuck on the head of the
Yeah.
VCR. And I
that
remember,
gave me nightmares, and it still to this day is traumatic for me, and that's why I'm like, take the VHS, and one day you're gonna understand.
do you remember programming your VCR? You remember those days?
Yeah,
Yeah, I still have nightmares about that.
and it would get hot, and then you wouldn't know if it was gonna melt the strip of film, and yeah,
Oh yeah, and then you remember you would have to have a separate thing to rewind the tape.
yeah. I
It
remember
is.
having a separate machine just to rewind it so that you could put another tape in, because family rental nights, like if you had like one more night to rent and you weren't done with your movies yet, you had to like speed count it, because that extra
Mhm.
like 2 or 3 minutes it took to rewind is crucial.
Oh yeah, and I miss those days. Honestly, I miss the days of renting movies, like being able to
Yeah.
go somewhere, go on a shelf, and see like all these horror movies. Like I remember when I was a kid, I would see the standee for Night of the Demons for what is it for well, I forgot the main girl's name, but she turns into a demon. But I remember seeing that standee up there, and it was scared the shit out of me when I was a kid. And now it's just funny, like for me, that feeling of going somewhere and picking out a movie. I don't know. It's hard to describe. I think maybe if you're our age or our generation, you will understand how awesome that is. Like going up there and picking something based on the art or something like that. And so it's funny because sometimes people will be like, "Oh, pick a movie." And I'm like 10 minutes trying to find something, and I'm like, "No, not that, not that. I already saw no, no, no. How about this?" And so for me, it's like when I was a kid, trying to pick out a movie, my parents would be like, "Oh, you can pick out one. Your mother picks out one, and there you go."
I liked it because I could work my way through the section. It's like
Mhm.
I had goals that way. It's like I worked my way through the entire section of the horror store. Like there was like a small one where I lived, so we
Mhm.
would go to like the bigger family video sometimes, but
Mhm.
there was a smaller one where I lived, so I got to like work my way kind of like every weekend. It kind of became a goal of mine. So like from the age of 7 to 9, I think I got through the entire horror section. And then they would sometimes replace them, but for the most part, it was like 80s and 90s movies. And I
Mhm.
just got through that entire thing. And like, I was pretty proud of myself because I'm like, I have seen all of these. Even though it was a smaller section than the larger one, I'm like, so I've seen this one, and this one's good. And then, like, I know what this is. And yeah, it was awesome.
Oh yeah, and it's great having that feeling. 'Cause I guess for people, maybe for us, it's about discovering a new film, right, or a new type of film, right, and like just kicking out the box and you falling in love with something. And for me, that's what cinema is. For me, it's about finding something I love or some of filmmaker I love, right? And for me, it's like I love digging deep in history and finding, filmmakers I love, films I love, right? And it's funny, like my top 10 films, three are silent films, two are Spanish, I think, and a couple of them are from like random ones, right? And it's just great having like an assorted collection, choice of types of movies. And they're all movies I discovered because I learned there's more than just one type of genre out there. There's different types of genre, right? And my top three favorite films are Diary of a Lost Girl, Pandora's Box, and Sunrise: A Song of Two Humans. Three silent films that are just perfect for me. Like they're just, I think, the epitome of storytelling, passion, and just films that I think really connect to the human spirit. And especially if you haven't seen Sunrise, it's such a good movie. It won the first Oscar, I think, for Best Actress, and it was a big review. And of course, I have like on there, but question to Sandra, what's your favorite horror movie? I'm curious.
What's the perfect horror movie, or what's my favorite one?
Favorite.
Well, again, that's like there's sub genres, and there's like a
Uh,
whole bunch of stuff to take into account, like what's the scariest one, what's the most rewatchable one, what's the one that I go to the most. So I mean, that's kind of an open-ended question there.
If someone were to ask you to recommend a horror movie that you would like,
That's another thing. It's like it depends on the person. Like I always ask the person what they like. Huh?
no,
Brian just goes, just answer the question. It's like
'cause
I can
it's
tell
hard.
you, huh?
It's hard.
Yeah, I'd probably say Scream. Like,
That's a
cause
good.
I watch that one so much. I can watch it whenever. Like, I love watching it all the time, and it influenced my life so much.
Oh yeah.
Um, it doesn't really scare me the way that it used to. It does now because when I was a kid growing up, I didn't really think of like that's how violent teenagers can get because that was like a um, that was before uh, Columbine,
Yeah.
and that was a something that only happened in movies and it wasn't really realistic. And
Mm-hmm.
then when that happened, that like kind of I think that and September 11th were kind of the cultural shifts for at least I think people our age.
Oh
Because
yeah, of
then
course.
it
Uh-huh.
like blew our minds like that doesn't happen. So I at the time it wasn't scary in that regard. It was the scariest part of that movie to me at that time was the garage, and I can't go it like by a garage without thinking that like at all. Like that still messes with me to this day.
Oh, I don't blame you.
I know it's probably like completely unrealistic, but that like it was not done before ever, and it's just it was such a weird and creepy thing. And also Tatum was my favorite, and I was like that was like one of the coolest final girls I've or chicks in the movies that I'd seen, and I think she was taken too soon, and I want justice for Tatum. I'm still
Mhm.
fighting like 20 years later.
Oh yeah. You
25
know,
years
for
later.
me,
But scariest movie though, Child's Play 2,
oh,
because
that's
I'm
good.
still scared of Chucky. Because when I saw it, I was I think I was 7, and he's my height, and I'm still pretty much that height, and he can get me, and it scares the crap out of me. So yeah, that voice though,
Okay, Kim said tiny girl power.
huh?
Kim said tiny girl power and raised her
That's
fist.
right. Tiny girls are closer to hell.
Exactly.
That's
You
right.
know what? You know what's funny? I have one movie that I had an experience where I actually changed the way something. Yeah, you've seen Ghoulies, right?
The what?
Ghoulies, the '80s movie with the
What
little
is it?
green Ghoulies.
No.
It's a movie with little green demons. Anyway, there's one where the demon comes out of the toilet, right, and kills somebody. And ever since when I saw it as a kid, it freaked me out. For I think probably for like a year, I would be scared to go to the restroom for that reason. And it was just like it's a really bad movie. If you think of it, if you look at it now, it's really bad. But for some reason, that scene when the ghoulie comes out of the toilet, it freaked me out as a kid.
I think that there are scarier things in the toilet than a little green demon.
Oh god! For some reason, ghoulies, I don't have no idea why the hell that movie like that. Just I could watch Hellraiser, I could watch Freddy Krueger, I could watch all this stuff, but the little gremlin coming out of the toilet scared the shit out of me. Hmm.
Um, I can tell you now that a movie that's like legit scary, Hereditary.
I have not
Actually,
seen.
no. Let me. I'll tell you the movie that I recommend for people. Like I do have a favorite horror movie, As Above, So Below.
Is that the one with the catacombs?
Yes.
It was
For
directed by another directors. He did another movie that I really like, but
I actually
yeah,
don't remember the director, so
yeah, he
you're a
did a
step
movie I
above of
really.
me on this. So for people that don't know, As Above, So Below is what Tomb Raider should have been.
Hmm.
I really believe that they're in the catacombs of France. They solve puzzles in a very Tomb Raider manner. It's kind of like The Descent in that they are in very cramped spaces. They have flashlights, and they're trying to find a treasure. and people get claustrophobic, but it's also very. That's not the part that scares me. There's like a lot of exposition, there's a lot of backstory there, and just really strange things are happening in the catacombs that cannot be explained. And then they really did go in the catacombs, and there's so you're seeing like skulls all around the walls,
Oh yeah.
and
Hmm.
then there's like a whole bunch of demonic type forces that are encroaching on their small group, and then it's just a really clever way of doing things. And there's another movie um that it's very famous, but I luckily hadn't seen it before this, and I'm not going to give a spoiler, but a lot of people had seen it before, and because they'd seen it before, they're like, oh yeah, it's kind of like this movie, so I'm not really impressed. um so it is very similar to that one. But on the opposite side, when I saw that movie, I was just like, this is kind of like As Above, So Below, but not really. But yeah, so I love As Above, So Below. I watch it like really late at night. It's very creepy, and I recommend that as a horror movie. It's when it came out, it wasn't really talked about that much.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
remember.
huh?
Oh, I remember. Yeah, when it came out, I think
Yeah,
like.
it was. I want to say like 2014.
Hmm.
So 10 years old now. You can stream that. It's a found footage type movie. If you're claustrophobic, I wouldn't really recommend that because some people have that pretty bad. But if you're a found footage type fan, if you're a Tomb Raider fan, um, it's very good. I like that movie a lot. That would be like my horror movie of horror movies.
That's fun. You know what I really like is I haven't been to Paris. I know Kim has been there before, and she's told me about she's told me about it, and all I know about Paris is things like Kiss. That's what I keep telling Kim. That's my joke. But I would love to go to the catacombs. That's one thing I would love to do, and it's just like I don't know. Me and Kim, we love the spooky shit. So
Oh
like
yeah,
all
me
that
too.
type of stuff we would do. So that's one of the places that we would like to go and check out. And honestly, you know I think the best horror movies are the ones that really connect with you. Like for me, I think you know what? I'm gonna change my answer. I think if you were to tell me what I my favorite horror movie is, I think I finally know. The Exorcist.
The Exorcist.
Exorcist. To this day, that movie still gets under my skin. First of all, it's perfectly directed by
Well, wait,
William.
what did you say?
Oh, it's perfectly directed by William Friedkin.
No, before
And
that.
oh, what's up? Oh, to this day, it still scares me. The Exorcist. I've seen it many times, like countless times throughout the years, and every single time it scares the hell out of me because it reaches to a very that movie connects to people, but for me, it connects to that Catholic faith that I grew up in as a kid, right? And I think for a lot of people, it hits a nerve, especially to like the foundation of humanity. And it works because the movie plays it very seriously and plays it very realistically, where it feels like a documentary. And a lot of people don't realize that the movie has a very minimalistic soundtrack. I think it only has a couple songs in it. But besides that, it's all sound, if I remember correctly. But The Exorcist is just so perfect because it just builds and builds and builds. And for me, I saw it when it got re-released in theaters in like '97. I'm not sure if you saw it when it got re-released in theaters, and I remember being in a line to go see it. And that movie still scares the shit out of me.
I got a movie like that where like it kind of hits a nerve, and that's why it creeps me out. It's a weird movie that I'll tell you about it when we get off
Okay.
the screen, because you're gonna be like, okay, that's kind of it's a horror movie, but it'd be like, why does December get creeped out by that? But yeah, it's okay.
Hey man, sometimes we all have weird movies where like we just keep us out for some reason. Oh god, there's like some like I don't know. Just remember in the 2000s when porn was going on. With the whole like, really gory movies like Saw and all those stuff like that.
Yeah,
And like for me, the one thing that would get me would be like somebody breaking their arm or something. For me, that was like what got me. I'm like, nope, I'm not watching this movie anymore. That's it. I'm good.
For
I
those
can see.
for those of you wondering, the December show is keeping it trying to keep it light and all that, and I'm not gonna get into uh, discussion on why this movie is like all weird. It's like gonna open a stuff about like religion, so I'm not gonna do that.
Yes,
It's fine.
but
Just the December show is about sparkles. That's all.
exactly, and you know
Yeah.
what? Life needs. I think life is serious enough where we need enjoyment, and we should connect to other people about the stuff we love and the stuff that we like instead of arguing with each other.
Actually, I don't want people like PMing me. So, Carrie and the Jesus statue. I think it's or no, it's what is it like the Saint Sebastian? It's not really a Jesus statue, cause
Now I'm trying to remember.
cause it's they said that like it looked like that, but it's the religious iconography and the mom, and
Oh
she's
yeah,
like the mom like creeped me out really bad. I just really don't want people PMing me and stuff, so like
yeah.
we're gonna keep the
Well,
show light, but also don't PM me. So I'm telling you on the show, but also nobody like PM me, please. But yeah, that movie like freaks me out. Piper Laurie, who like passed away last year, like she did an excellent performance, but man, did she creep me out because I saw that movie and I read the book too. But when people get overzealous about anything and they treat the
mhm.
people they're supposed to protect and care for like that, it's extremely disturbing.
Oh yeah,
So
and
yeah, that movie is just ugh. Plus, I also don't really like the '70s that much. Like in terms of how stuff is like shot and clothes and all that. Like that's also like weird to me.
you know it's funny. Brian De Palma directed Carrie, right? And so I'm a big Brian De Palma fan, and
I remember
so
that. Yeah,
and the split screen, right? The
yeah,
in Carrie, he's famous for that. He does a lot of split screens, and in my short film, I did a split screen in homage to Brian De Palma. And it's funny because I was talking to a friend recently, and we were talking about remakes, right? About why we make a movie, and we are talking about the Carrie remake, right? And we are like, originally, I was like, why not do the book, right? Because the book's different than the movie. The movie is done more straightforward as opposed to the book is different. And I remember people were like, "Yeah, they're gonna make the book. They're gonna make the book," and then they ended up remaking the movie the same exact way
yeah.
they told the movie they did the remake.
I don't even think that the remake was gonna work back then when they announced the casting call, and sure as hell they didn't. But
Yeah, because me and Cameron were talking about the Crow remake, and yeah, that's how we started talking about Carrie because we're talking about the Crow remake that's gonna come out soon, and we are
like I
not
said,
looking.
this is a happy place, so
Exactly.
let's try to
So
keep it
forget about
happy.
the original. The original is great. Everyone
Yeah,
should go see it. It's fantastic.
it's like
Brandon Lee is amazing.
Because like, why are they remaking it? Like, just leave it alone. I will say this
Exactly.
though, Carrie 2 is a really good movie. I really
Oh,
like
yeah.
that one. It's like, just don't even look at it as a sequel. It's a good '90s movie.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Good
And
soundtrack, good plot. I like
it's
it.
underrated.
It's not really a sequel so much, but I hate that it gets a bad rep. I hate that it got a bad rep when it came out. I was like, no, this is a good horror movie. Just people calm down.
Exactly. And as well, there's sometimes movies or stories can be ahead of their time, and then eventually people will catch on to it eventually later on and be like, "Hey, this is a good movie. Hey, you know what? They were trying to do something different." You know what I mean? And it's pretty interesting when you see that, like, because sometimes that's the problem with when you make something. Sometimes you can be too far ahead in the future, and people miss out on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And but always I'm always positive about I think especially with when it comes to what we're passionate about, we should always be positive. Life has enough drama. Life has enough bad stuff in it that we need to find the stuff that makes us happy and find happiness in that and not focus on the negative. And
Life
sometimes
doesn't
it's
have enough drama. That's why I'm here.
Exactly. Exactly. And see, thank God.
That's right. All right, tell people where they can find you one more time, and then we're gonna hit the end button so that people can
Sure.
review this over and over.
Oh, well, thank God I have my sister here. She's fantastic.
Okay, well, that's Instagram.
That's my Instagram right there, Gio
Closer to the
underscore.
screen. That's a great idea.
So that's my Instagram right there. I normally post stuff about my thoughts about writing, comic books, movies, stuff I'm watching. I'm also on Facebook at my full name. My assistant is writing it. She's really good and she's amazing. She's a great cat mom. I'm mad. I'm saying this out the rest.
His assistant is really like high queen energy with short girl, dark hair awesomeness, just like myself. So I'm not gonna allow him to say his assistant.
So that's me,
His
Giovanni
his,
Borunda.
his assistant is like straight up royalty, and her name is Kim.
Yes.
Thanks, Maria.
Kim says hi. Thank you. Tiny hearts.
And if you can see that. That was a hand heart.
She tried. But yeah, so feel free to follow me on there, and what? No, I don't have it.
Oh.
I have them. I don't even use them because Twitter is a cesspool of stuff that I don't want to talk about. But yeah, so feel free to hit me up on there, and if you would like to get any of your books, I can sure send you the links to people that have the books.
He doesn't bite, so if you send him messages, he will respond. He's pretty good at that. I can vouch for that. Oh, look at she's got the heart.
Yeah, she says heart back. But yes, but thank you so much for December Critters. I've been looking forward to chatting with you. I always love chatting with you and just talking about general stuff and
he's not lying. Stuff. This is actually what we do, like just with the screen. Normally it's texting. This is an exact text conversation that we would have had, like
exactly
the horror movie and everything. This is, I'm not joking. This is identical to a text message that we would have had today. Only with the announcement of his Facebook page. So make sure that you go there. You can find him via my page as well. He's usually posting stuff there. Same thing as me. I sent him a pinhead dip with crackers right before the show because we were talking about pinhead. But I'm at Facebook, Miss December 32, I believe. I don't even know my Facebook page. Hang on. Yeah, Miss December 32. My picture is with me, a crown, and a Christmas tree, as it should be. You can also find me at the Miss December on Instagram. And if you find me there, you'll find him too. So make sure that you check him out. Also, I want to give a special shout out to Sam Payne, who was having computer problems and couldn't be my guest a few weeks ago. But he is awesome. He did a sick Archie Valentine's Day special cover, and also Greg Bo Watson, who we have to reschedule, but he was in South Carolina cons a couple of. He was there, I think, like a couple of weeks ago, but he is an outstanding artist and an even better friend. So, dude, you are awesome. We're gonna get you rescheduled in. And then also for rescheduling, Jen Leonard. She's got a ton of Zenescope pictures right now, covers, and she's killing it. So make sure that you get on over to her page. We got a lot of guests lined up for the next couple of weeks, so make sure that you follow the page. Hopefully, I'm not going to get my links screwed up, and then everything will go as nicely as it went today. Probably won't play what horror movie is your favorite like we did tonight, but we're going to talk some more art. So that being